already know something is missing. This book is where it's been hiding. 11 years of schizophrenia. Every medication, every appointment, every carefully managed day. And then one goblet squat, and a voice that had been talking for a decade finally went quiet. Iron Mind is the story of one man reverse engineering his own mental health through bodybuilding, backed by real neuroscience, and written with the honesty of someone who had nothing left to lose by telling the truth. It is the book that psychiatry forgot to write. It will change how you think about the body, the brain, and what recovery is actually allowed to look like. The barbell does not care about your diagnosis. It only cares about one thing. Can you pick it up? The man, the diagnosis, and 11 years of surviving Daniel Avery, was 23 years old and studying neuroscience at UC Berkeley when schizophrenia arrived without warning or apology. A voice with a name, Marcus. A sensory overload he called the static. A breakdown in front of 40 colleagues that ended his academic career and began 11 years of careful, medicated cotton wool survival. By 33, Daniel was working part-time in a medical library, living in a Koreatown apartment built to the exact dimensions his diagnosis allowed. He was managed, he was stable, he was not living. Iron Mind is the account of what happened when, on the recommendation of a friend over tacos in a Silver Lake parking lot, he walked into a gym with 5-pound dumbbells and stayed 35 minutes longer than he planned. It is a book about schizophrenia, about the neuroscience of movement, about the specific stubbornness required to rebuild a life from a body you stopped trusting. It is about Marcus going quiet for the first time in 11 years, not because of a new medication, but because a goblet squat left no room for him. The barbell doesn't care about your diagnosis. He stood in the weight room and felt the static begin to rise. That specific frequency of overwhelm, the room turning hostile, the mirrors multiplying everything. He almost left. He had, in 11 years, always almost left. Instead, he found a bench in the corner, picked up the lightest dumbbells in the room, and did a set of curls, then another. Marcus was present, cataloguing his inadequacies with customary precision. And then, around the 15th minute, something strange happened. The voice went quiet, not permanently, not even for long, but for the duration of one goblet squat, in the coordination of weight and breath and balance. There was no room for Marcus. The working memory was fully occupied. The brain could not allocate attention to two things that fully required it at once. Daniel stood up and thought, that's attentional displacement. He had a word for it because he was a neuroscientist living inside his own experiment. He drove home. He opened his laptop. He typed, exercise, schizophrenia outcomes. He read for 4 hours. He was not, by the end, someone who had solved his own problem. He was someone with a hypothesis. The science hidden in plain sight. What Daniel discovered in the research literature was not a secret. It was simply underprescribed. Exercise, particularly resistance training involving compound, heavy, coordinated movement, does things to the brain that psychiatrists rarely discuss and pharmaceutical companies cannot patent. It upregulates BDNF, the brain's own growth factor, stimulating the hippocampal neurogenesis that schizophrenia actively suppresses. It modulates the dopamine system, not by blocking receptors the way antipsychotics do, but by generating real achievement-based dopamine through real effort, strengthening the very prefrontal pathways that the illness leaves underpowered. It trains the HPA axis through repeated acute stress and recovery, teaching the body's cortisol system to stop running chronically hot. And it activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain's regulatory center, the system responsible for quieting false alarms, in ways that directly reduce the frequency and severity of psychotic symptoms. Daniel began a symptom journal, tracking daily against his training schedule. The pattern that emerged across 8 weeks of data was unmistakable. He brought the journal to his psychiatrist, Dr. Ramona Chen, in a folder containing 7 printed research papers. She read them in silence, then, "Keep going." It was the most important clinical advice of 11 years. What 4 years built, and what it could not return, Iron Mind does not end with a cure. It ends with something more honest and more useful, a life. 4 years on, Daniel deadlifts 405 pounds. His medication has been reduced by a third under careful clinical supervision. Marcus is audible for minutes where he was once audible for hours. The last major psychiatric episode lasted 11 days. Historically, they had lasted 50. He is enrolled in a research program at UCLA, co-authoring papers on exercise and schizophrenia with the scientist who took his symptom journals seriously. He is in a relationship, he has a community, he has the 10 principles, distilled from 4 years of daily tracking, failed sets, setbacks, and the gradual, non-linear, deeply unglamorous process of building a brain that functions better than it did. What he does not have is the 11 years back. They happened the way they happened, and the grief of them is real. But the man who wrote this book is not the man who lost those years. He is the man who survived them and built something on the other side. He gets up at 5:45 a.m. He packs the gym bag the night before. He goes. That is where it always starts. You already know something is missing. This book is where it's been hiding. 11 years of schizophrenia. Every medication, every appointment, every carefully managed day, and then one goblet squat, and a voice that had been talking for a decade finally went quiet. Iron Mind is the story of one man reverse engineering his own mental health through bodybuilding, backed by real neuroscience, and written with the honesty of someone who had nothing left to lose by telling the truth. It is the book that psychiatry forgot to write. It will change how you think about the body, the brain, and what recovery is actually allowed to look like. The barbell does not care about your diagnosis. It only cares about one thing. Can you pick it up?